Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. All right, friends, welcome. So today I am talking to the woman who is in charge of everything and probably told that the reason she's in charge of everything, whether that's at work, at home, with her kids, with home management, with her relationship, is because you're really, really good at leading people, influencing them, and managing high expectations. Right. This makes me think of a supervisory experience I had way back in the day where this person was consistently struggling to follow through with what they had said they were going to do. Right. Clearly, they were functioning outside of their window of tolerance. But what I heard was I have a really high threshold in terms of pressure, essentially. And I think this is the issue. This is what we see in leadership over and over again, is that people who move into a place of leadership, especially senior leadership in a corporate space where pressure is everything, perception is everything, right? We see that this really puts you in a box. And what happens is you start to develop this mindset of, I'm really good at handling these things. This is a part of who I am. This is just a part of my personality. So therefore, because it's not a function of the environment that you're in, we hit copy and paste and we use those same dynamics at home, because you don't magically become a new person as soon as you walk through the front door rather than the office door. And this erodes relationships. So in my last episode, I was really talking about what feminine, embodied, and rooted leadership looks like if you are coming from a place of abundance and embodiment, right? This idea of magnetizing and just being able to receive. Today, I'm talking about tactical steps that you can take in your relationship if you want to implement what it actually looks like to co-lead in a healthy partnership. Okay, so if you are someone who journals or who takes notes, maybe those are on your phone, this is an episode that you do not want to miss. And it's one that you want to go ahead and pull out that journal right now. Okay, we're not waiting until the end. We are going to start giving you the takeaways that you actually need to build the insight as well as the behavioral change to start moving in a healthier relationship today. Okay. I'm a big believer that it takes both. It takes the insight, it takes the, ooh, that was uncomfortable, but it also takes a driving behavior to sustainably change this dynamic over time. I always tell people, especially one-on-one clients, if you're not ready or open to taking behavioral change right now, that is 100% okay. There's no shame in that game, and readiness is really important. But if you're not ready to do that, then I'm not the coach or the therapist for you, and you may as well slide a check under the door, right? Because you're not actually going to get anything out of this with the particular way that I move in my work. There are plenty of people who do phenomenal work there. I'm just not one of them. I am about, let's make change now. Okay, so let's talk about the root of this issue, right? Let's talk about the problem with uneven leadership, because this is very different than leadership or partnership that is moving in accordance with strengths, okay? Really what I'm not talking about a relationship saying, wow, this person is really good at, I don't know, this person has bigger muscles and therefore they're going to be the person who changes the tire. I don't know. I'm literally thinking about a flat tire that I got a few months ago, and I did very good. I changed the majority of the tire, but I couldn't get the jack to stay underneath the car, right? My husband, as crabby as I can be about this, he has more muscles than I do. And he has put a jack underneath the car several times. So I called him and played to that strength. That's not what I'm talking about here. I am talking about an ongoing dynamic where essentially one partner is leading and taking assertive action, bringing issues to the table, helping to move the relationship forward, and the other one defers. The other one is passive. Typically, my client is the one, so the woman is the one who leads. This is the kinds of relationships I'm talking about, right? They are push, 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 and husband comes in and defers. It's very passive, this can actually feel like a mothering relationship, right? There's a line that I say often, and it really tends to resonate with people, is that if you continue to behave like his mother, then he will continue to behave like a child. Okay? Because here's what I mean by this. This past weekend, we had a huge parenting win. We've been teaching our children developmentally appropriate chores. So we're going to do the dishes together. We're going to do laundry together. Long story short, my daughter started a load of laundry on her own today. And the thought that went into building this small set of skills was very intentional for me, right? Because she's 2.5. She does not have much of a prefrontal cortex. As I am the person who decided to bring her into this world, it is my job to help function and help her develop this prefrontal cortex until it's developmentally appropriate for me to step back and be like, you got it, see you later, right? That doesn't happen at 2.5. And so I chose to teach her laundry because sister loves her a good princess dress, and she loves her 10 wardrobe changes throughout the day. Okay. Makes a lot of work for me. So I have set a boundary around, cool, I will help you with first wardrobe change. And then if we get dirty or we have an accident or whatever, of course I'm going to help you then. But if you are just on a whim, hey, I started as Belle and now I'm really eyeing up that Anna dress and now I want to switch, that's on you. And now you need to take the dress that is dirty and go put it in the laundry. So it was very, very intentional. I thought about her developmental level. I thought about her signs of readiness to start a few chores. I thought about what motivates her. I thought about playing to her strengths and what she really enjoys, right? All of this was happening in my prefrontal cortex because I know that developmentally she does not have those things right now. The issue is whenever we start putting this level of thought and over-functioning and intentionality into our relationships with another adult. This is where you get this idea of the mental load and just being exhausted and burned out from the emotional load that comes with being the over-functioning woman in a relationship, right? It's a huge, huge issue because if you're doing this for your partner, you are not only robbing him of the ability to learn and implement and develop these skills on his own, experience natural consequences, but then you're using all of that cognitive energy to mothering him. And last I checked, no one is interested in sleeping with a child. That is we're not even going there. That's not the podcast that we are doing, right? So it's going to create this distance, this get off of me, this overstimulated, touched out feeling is then going to be applied to your relationship with your partner versus it's probably just going to come out, especially if you have young children, right? Where you're like, oh my gosh, I need a break. This is a huge issue. This is where this is a dynamic. It is ongoing. So for the women who find themselves ruminating on how they could have asked for their needs to be met in a better way, if they could have, whether or not it was their partner's job, right? But they just find themselves getting really obsessive, going down the list of I should have done this different. I should have done this different. And I will tell you, this is what brings women through the door when they start working with me, is they come in and they say, okay, I'm having issues in my relationship, and I need to know how to fix myself because I know that I can only control myself, which is a very healthy mentality halfway. Right? It can get really sticky and challenging here because yes, it is true that you can only control yourself. The other half of that is that it is healthy to have expectation of your partner to allow them to show up for you, right? So if you are the person who is always suggesting that you go on a walk or that you repair after you had a hard conversation, or let's hold the we call them like State of the Unions at our house. All right. It's like our monthly weekly meeting that we have where we do check-ins, right? What appointments do we have on the docket for next week? Is there anything specific we want to work on? Is there anything with parenting that we needs adjusting? And honestly, like in this phase or season of life that I am in at the time of this recording, this is happening like every other week. And sometimes it's happening like as we're climbing into bed. But if you're the person who's not only saying we should do this, but also consistently holding the other person to it, right? All right, like, yes, we need to do this. Here's the agenda. And also now it's time to go and do that. All of these are symptoms of this dynamic of uneven leadership at home. Okay. So other things where I see this is like consistently holding more emotional labor, the logistical planning of certain things. So everyone loves a good vacation. But if you're the one who's consistently saying, here's where we're going, here are our flights, here's the time you need to show up, here's where we're staying, all of that, right? Future forecasting. So, hey, it's July. We want to start thinking about Christmas gifts so that we're not feeling it in November. If you constantly find yourself asking your partner for the same thing over and over and over again. Now, there will be in long-term partnerships, there's always going to be just pain point. I tell people that if you have two people who have the same goal and they are willing to continue moving toward it, then chances are you have a good enough relationship. Keep in mind, we're not looking for a certain grade. We're not looking for perfection. I'm not saying there's never going to be an issue. I'm saying if you have the same goal and you have two people who want to move toward it, then chances are you have a good enough relationship, okay? If you find yourself consistently coming back to the same issue over and over and over again, and there's not growth, there's not movement forward, even if it's small, I don't care. And sometimes that means taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But there should be some sort of movement here, right? And that's going to speak to a more even dynamic. If you are bringing the same thing up over and over and over again, this is speaking to like, hey, there's a bigger issue here. Also, if you find yourself consistently putting yourself at the bottom of your own list, a lot of times when I am working with women, and I am guilty of this dynamic myself, especially if I'm in a busier season, right? But if you are consistently at the bottom of that list, what that tells me is that, cool, you do not see yourself as being important. You are not pouring your cup first so that you can pour into others, right? And that probably is the result of an uneven dynamic. Yes, that started in childhood and now has grown into your relationship, but that's just that is a function, and that's how you're used to being treated. And it's how you're used to asking other people how to treat you, right? This is speaking to a dynamic issue. And then here's my biggest red flag. Again, that we are no longer functioning good enough, but that there's a genuine dynamic here that needs to be addressed, is that you secretly resent your partner for feeling guilty. Okay? So you are secretly resenting your partner for putting yourself at the bottom of the list, for always being the person who is driving forward and doing all of the things, but you feel guilty for it. There we go. That's how I wanted to phrase that. If there's resentment there, that is speaking to victim anger, okay? That is speaking to, I feel like I don't have a choice, and it just boils and boils and gets bigger, bigger, and bigger. This is speaking to a regression. Typically, when we are in resentment, our little is actually activated, and they are the ones who are driving the bus. Because here's the thing, adults always have a choice. No matter what it is, adults always have a choice. It might not be a good choice, it might not be a choice that feels good, it might not be a choice where we can live with the consequences, right? But adults always have a choice. If you feel like you don't, you're going to fall into that resentment, that victim anger, and you're going to get stuck there. If you find yourself living in this place, it's speaking to that emotional regression as being present in your marriage the majority of the time, okay? So, as you've heard me talk about before, the way that we get here is by growing up in a home where you are taught to pay attention to everyone else around you rather than internally. So this does 2 things. One, it creates hypervigilance. It means that you walk into a room and you're paying attention to what does everyone in this room need, And you kind of get this delusion that you know what they need, right? So someone who is very empathic, someone who is identifying as a highly sensitive person, who is a highly sensitive person, right? The danger with this, with saying that you are an empath and identifying that way, is it can potentially, and there's multiple parts of this, but what it can lead to is, I know what is happening in this room. When in reality, you know what you think is happening in the room. You know what you think the person sitting across from you needs. But at the end of the day, we are not God, and we don't truly know. Not until we get the words out, right? Doesn't mean that you're not good at that, because chances are you are. But it's just acknowledging that we cannot play God. So that's one end of it, is you end up being in a space where you're paying attention to everyone else. The second thing this does, growing up in a home like this, is it disconnects you from your own body. The way that you know what you need and what you want is you pay attention to what is happening with the sensations in your body. So do your shoulders come back? Do you get really excited? Does your face light up? Do you notice you're taking a step back? Do you notice that there's tangles in your arms or in your legs and it feels like you want to move? All of that is information that is giving you more context and a deeper understanding of who you are. If you have been raised to pay attention to the people around you, hey, hush, it's not that bad. Hush, it's not that bad, even though you're visibly crying, over time you cut off. And so you end up very, very disconnected. Okay. So, and I want to unpack this, because a lot of times what I hear is, I had a good enough childhood, right? My parents did the best that they could. And honestly, the way that I grew up, it made me who I am today. So how could I ever have an issue with it, right? This is what I want to tell you, and what I want you to hear is, I'm not out to wag a finger at mom and dad. I am out to get you effective results sustainably and at the pace that I know you want them, which is quick, right? If we want to do that, we need to go back to the beginning and address what happened. The reality is that healthy people typically are going to create healthy marriages, and they come from healthy homes. Parenting is so hard, and it's excessive, 24/7. Oh my gosh, it's a lot. It's a lot. And this is coming from someone who did years of therapy before becoming a parent, right? I kind of feel like I got a little bit of a leg up there in terms of being able to identify my own patterns and doing work on my nervous system before I moved into the season. It is so hard, and I still raise my voice. I still behave in ways that I feel ashamed of, and I know that I could have done better, want to do better, right? And even in that, there's this critical lens that comes online. Parenting is so incredibly challenging. This is not about shaming parents. This is about honoring your experience. I always tell people there's multiple stages whenever you get into healing. The stage that we're looking at, if we are trying to pull you into healthier dynamics, is all about awareness, and it's about you. Now, as you start thinking about, how is this going to impact my relationship with my parents? The reality is it doesn't necessarily have to, right? But either way, we're not there yet. We're not talking about that. What we're addressing is what happened to you, so that we can more deeply connect with your inner child. Because if you're telling me there's not an issue, well, then why is the pattern recreating itself over here, right? So I want to unpack this just a little bit more in terms of, what is it like to be this oldest daughter, so that you can kind of get an idea of, maybe some of these things did happen, right? Because I'm gonna tell you a story, but it's gonna be a composite, and the reason for that is multiple reasons. I'm not gonna take anyone's personal business and put it out on the internet, but also I have heard the same story, a template of a story, a million times, right? I work with a very, very niche audience. And this is part of where my confidence comes with whenever I'm working with people, is I can tell you 1 and 1 is 2, and relationships break down that way. And I am working with someone who is so specific. They've had a very similar life experience. So let's get into this. I am thinking of, multiple clients, right? But typically this woman, I'm going to call her Jane. I don't know anyone named Jane. So at the time of this recording, just in case down the road, I end up working with Jane. So Jane grew up in a home with two other siblings, and she was the oldest. Okay, shout out to all of the oldest daughters in the house. She had a mom who worked incredibly hard, and her mom was very successful within her own right, but her mother had to work for the success that she found at work, which means she had long hours. She wasn't always emotionally available. She was giving what she had to offer primarily to work. And the reason for this is because she had to. She was putting food on the table. And as a result of this as well, her mother was very concerned about how she and her children were being perceived by the external world. Because again, if she were in contact with what she actually needed and wanted, she probably wouldn't have been working that hard in the first place, right? Those two things can't coexist. And she also grew up with a father who externally appeared to do everything for his family, but typically internally was very passive. So he didn't assert himself, certainly not within his marriage. He would get angry and would get loud and puffy, right? Therefore, people tend to think that he was very assertive, but he was more of a chihuahua. He would get angry and he would puff up, but there was an actual bite to that. And there wasn't actual discipline, because the meaning of the word discipline is to teach. So there wasn't a lesson that came on the other end of it, even if this dad really enjoyed talking, right? In terms of, I am living in a way that is giving you an example of what emotional presence looks like and what true guidance looks like, that wasn't there. Instead, he would complain a whole bunch, and he was not very emotionally present for his children or for his marriage, okay? So oldest daughter functions and is hyper aware of the expectations in the room, right? Because there's a lot of pressure. Pressure is like her core issue, if you will. And she's also the recipient of tons and tons of adults in her life telling her, well, everyone is paying attention to us, and so you really need to make sure you iron your dress. You really need to keep your siblings under control because X, Y, and Z family is going to be there and they're paying attention. Okay? Make sure that you behave in a certain way because you are a reflection of this family. Make sure you thank your father because he works very hard for this family. Right? So in this way, there's also a sense of coddling that happens with the father in this home. We're going to excuse his drinking. We're going to excuse his lack of emotional presence. We're going to excuse his lack of financial contribution to the family. We are going to excuse his bad behavior, his ugly comments that he makes, because he works very hard and he's under a lot of pressure, right? This is directly imprinting the belief it's my job to take care of the men in my life and to not expect a whole lot from them. So over time, Jane grows up and she never really recognizes what it is that she wants or needs. She instead finds enjoyment in serving other people and taking care of other people and doing things that she is good at. Okay. And that's when she feels like the apple of dad's eye. And there becomes this dynamic of actual tension and stress between her and her mom because she starts to get attention from dad. Okay. This is the concept of enmeshment. This is the concept of being used as a surrogate spouse, all of which we can get into. But this is how this dynamic develops and starts. Okay. So fast forward, she grows up, externally is incredibly successful. She has gone into something not necessarily that she enjoys, but certainly something that she knows is going to bring her success. And in fact, oftentimes with a lot of the clients that I work with, there's not even a conscious decision to move forward and to choose this path. Usually they struggle with being overly visible too soon. And so they are kind of thrust into this place of leadership, this place of success, this place of spotlight. And they actually are scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with this? How do I manage this? Right? This translates into tension in her marriage for years and years and years, because all she knows is how much pressure she is under. And one day she says, I'm done. I think that I need to leave. Oh my gosh, there must be something wrong with me for even having this thought, right? This is usually whenever she walks into therapy and she meets me and realizes like, okay, yes, there are areas of growth in her marriage, but it's not just the marriage. 9 times out of 10, women who come into my office will say, I just need him to do X, Y, and Z, and then I will be fine. Things will be better. Come to later find out, actually, there are issues in the way that I am leading out work. There's money being left on the table if they are running a business, right? There are issues in the relationships with my children. There's not as much emotional connection as there could be. There's distance that I'm keeping because they don't actually know how to be emotionally intimate with someone. Like it spans across settings, right? It's not just this one area that they're struggling with. And so over time, what we do is we're pulling back the pieces. We're realizing, okay, she's actually been projecting this childhood wound onto her partner, who has, by the way, never actually even been given the chance to show up for her because she hasn't allowed him to, right? She doesn't even know how to allow him to. This is what this looks like. If you resonated with any part of this, then I'm talking to you, right? This is where this stuff can get really, really insidious, and where I believe as in the mental health industry, we really are not serving our high performers in the way that we need to be. Because a lot of times, if you come in, I had this experience when I tried to get medication for my postpartum depression. I was told by a psychiatrist, you are more productive than I am in a month, and you cram it into a few days. There's no way that you are depressed. You don't come up on our depressive scales. So I'm not sure how to help you. And I was talking with my midwife, and I thought that just the way she phrased it was phenomenal. She said, just because you are capable of using your skills and you are a high performer, that does not mean that you're not suffering. But a lot of times this is what we do, right? Is we default to looking at external accolades and your ability to white knuckle a coping skill and say, yep, good enough. Okay. So this is where we get into this idea of why exactly high performing women default to managing everything, because they were never truly given the choice not to. And if the world is telling you that you are one thing, then who are you to say something different? If you've never been taught that you have sovereignty, you have authority over your own life experience, why in the world would you say, yes, I actually do have all of these things on my resume, on my CV. I do have this kind of revenue or income or business, or I lead this company, and also I need help. And also I don't know how to do this, right? This is where we get stuck. This is why this dynamic is so incredibly abusive when you're growing up with it, okay? So here's where I want you to take out your pen, because we're going to talk about what does healthy co-leadership actually look like in marriage, okay? I'm going to break down these core elements, and we're going to go one by one. So the first is shared responsibility. This means that both partners are contributing to logistics and emotional repair. And this looks different for everyone, but this might mean that you suggest you'll need a meeting, there's some repair that needs to happen, but your partner is the one who comes in and initiates it. This could also look like, especially if you are in young parenthood, or if you are type B with type A tendencies like me, it could mean that you make a home systems binder. I actually... I made one of these like this weekend for our family, because if you know me, you know that I'm very passionate about home management and delegating in your personal life in the same way that you delegate in your professional life. And I think that this just gives a new ability to like truly experience motherhood, especially if you're trying to do it all, especially if you're trying to manage the corporate world, the business world, as well as show up for kids. And this is like times a million if your kids are young, okay? So a home systems binder for me And I'll leave a link under it. So I'll tell you, it's not branded. This isn't something like, this is, it is helpful for my family. And so you are welcome to copy and paste and use it, but I'm not going to have my team, bless them. They deal with a lot from me in terms of now how to do this and now how to do this. So I'm not going to get it branded. I'm not going to do anything like that, but I will leave a link in the show notes if you want to go and download it. And see, here's what this has, right? The home systems binder is the result of me having worked with lots of home managers and having lots of support and putting our home into systems. So basically, for me, what I have is it's broken down between summer and winter. And I have weekly meal ideas. So that way, all I have to do whenever I'm putting together my grocery list is I pull this binder out and I sit with a little expo marker because all of the pages are in a page protector. And I go through and like Monday is crock pot, Tuesday's Taco Tuesday, Wednesday is usually some kind of seafood. And I go through and I just sort of tick the meals that I want to make for that week. For us, we usually meal prep and we bulk out meal prep on the weekend. That way I'm not having to cook during the week, or my husband's not having to cook during the week. This just is a part of our flow that makes things go a lot better, a lot more easy in our day-to-day life. So anyway, I have all of those ideas in there. I also have like seasonal produce, like veggies and fruits in there. So again, as I'm putting together my list, I really don't have to think about it very hard. And that's really what I'm doing with this binder is I took the mental load that my husband and I both have been carrying around and I put it into a binder. That way I can put together the grocery list, but also my husband can do that just as easily. But it's still like food is something I'm pretty sensitive about. It's not something I always had access to growing up. And so this is a way that I can feel like I'm getting the meals that I would like and sort of expectations can be met, but I'm also playing to my strengths here, right? So anyway, I have that. I literally told ChatGPT, here are all of the toys that I have in my home. Please create morning basket ideas because my kids love a good morning basket, and then a toy rotation schedule. And it grouped everything for me. It gave me all of that. It also put on there different like game ideas because one thing that my husband and I have been chatting about recently is that, so my son at the time of this recording is 1.5. Yeah, 15 months, almost 16 months. My daughter is 2.5, just about 3 years old. Like we are in it in terms of toddlerhood and diapers and going through sleep regressions. Like we're very tired, but we're also in this stage of parenthood that like, oh my gosh, guys, it's magic. It is so much fun. Like all the kids want to do is hang out with us, right? How cool is that? Like makes me emotional thinking about it. Like it's a season of parenthood that if you put the right supports in place, it can be so much fun, but it can also be so overwhelming. And we both are very committed to a goal of being present in our lives and really getting to like soak in this time where they want to spend time with us. Like we are like their best friends, right? And that doesn't necessarily go both ways because we are their parent first, right? But like, oh my gosh, I want to enjoy my children, but I get bored, they get bored. And so what I know about my husband and I both is we're both very ADHD. And if you put an idea in front of us that says, here are some ideas, we can execute like no one's business. Okay. So that's part of where the home systems binder comes into place too, is it just gives me a few ideas, puts it right in front of my face of like, hey, you could do water balloons, you could go play freeze tag, you could whatever, right? And it doesn't really give me a plan necessarily for games, but it gives me ideas. And it's a way that this version of me this weekend, who we were watching like Abbott Elementary, and I just had the energy. And so I just worked with ChatGPT. I did not put all of this together. It was me and Chat. It's a way that I was taking care of myself in the future, right? And it allows me to be more present with my children. It allows me to be more present with myself and to remember I need to go on a walk. I need to go get a massage. I need to schedule a lunch date with my husband. So there's that. There's the kid component. There's the meal component. There's also like if you own a home or you're renting a home or you're living in a home, there's a lot of upkeep that comes with that. And things that for my husband and I, like we always say we need help adulting. We love a good support system. And so we just put on there, here are all of the bigger chores like washing the shutters, washing the windows, things like that need to happen once a year, but we don't think about or we do, and then it all kind of happens at once. So instead, in here, it also like in July, it says, time to make your Christmas budget and time to think about, what do you want to be getting for stocking stuffers? And I have a specific bin in the garage that holds all of these things. That way we're collecting them rather than scrambling in November or December, right? At this point, like we're set, we're good to go. So again, I like literally just decided right now, but I will leave a link to this. And yeah, it really doesn't have anything to do with like my business. Y'all are going to be like, what in the world? This is not a very strategic move, but I'm very grateful to my audience. I love the work that I get to do. And I do think this is something that is incredibly helpful. I'm very, very passionate about home management, bringing in people to support families and breaking mothers in particular out of this idea that we're supposed to be doing all of it on our own. I think that's BS. I think that's not true. It's not fair. I think that you should be allowed to want the career, you should be allowed to want the business, and you shouldn't be expected then to run yourself into the ground, right? Because dishes and cooking, that is not motherhood. That is home management. Motherhood is holding your daughter's hand and going on a walk around the block. Motherhood is being resourced within your body enough to say, hey, mommy is having some really big feelings. I'm going to go take a break and then I'm going to come back. We're going to set a timer for 10 minutes and then I will be back, right? Like that is motherhood. That is the magic. That is the whimsiness of all of it. I love it. I think it is so much fun. And also motherhood, parenthood, fatherhood, it comes with responsibility. We are required to meet these base needs for our children, right? And I just believe that home management can be affordable. It can be accessible. And then I'm going to get off my high horse because I'm literally just on the first one. It's going to be a long episode. But some ways that you can make it more accessible is if you have something like a home systems binder and you can go and hand that then to a nanny or a babysitter, someone who can come and help you out for 2 hours a week, right? Just to give you some support. Hey, can you hit ... right? And that's it. Okay. Focus, Brittany. So the second thing that in terms of like, what is it actually, the core element of what it looks like to have healthy co-leadership is mutual respect. Okay, this is really, really big for my clients. A lot of times my clients come in, I can struggle with this, and there are leadership differences that are present between themselves and their partner. Here's what's important to know is that both ways of doing things are valid. And that tends to be the dynamic that I work with the most is typically one person is pushing more than the other. One is a little bit more avoidant. One is a little bit more anxious, preoccupied. They're moving toward this person. And therefore we get into this idea of if you're not doing it my way, then you're not doing it the right way. I always tell the story of sitting in therapy. So my husband and I, we did therapy with a perinatal therapist when I was pregnant with my daughter. And after a few sessions together, this woman looked at me. She looked at me and she said, something you are going to have to work on is getting out of the way and keeping your nose out of your husband's relationship with his daughter. Unless he is actively harming your daughter, you need to sit down and you need to let him do it his way. And guys, I have never felt more attacked and more seen in my life. Oh my gosh. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I hear you, little miss. I have a degree in working with kids and I have a PhD and la, 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 la. She was like, you think that your way is the best way. You think it's the most effective way. She was like, and the reality is that your children have to be exposed to doing things differently if they are ever going to find their own voice, their own way forward. So get out of the way. Learn how to sit on your hands and acknowledge that just because it looks different doesn't make it wrong. That is mutual respect. Okay. A tip for you here, if you struggle with this one, is to practice curiosity if you find yourself feeling critical. Anytime we're in a place of being critical of someone, our stuff is showing up and our teenager is online and is driving the bus. So when you notice that, what you can do, an easy way that you can shift out of that is simply to say, whoa, like, what is this reminding me of? And what does my teenager need right now? Okay, third core element here is reciprocity. Attunement goes both ways, guys. This means asking for and also doing, practicing listening without fixing. So perhaps asking your partner, I want you to listen and I want you to share your thoughts and your feelings that show up as you're listening to me, but I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to be there with me, right? Emotional support. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, perhaps they're going to step up and offer you a break. This is especially true with parenting in the younger years, right? So if you are feeling overwhelmed, you're in the moment and you're just like, oh my gosh, maybe it is that your partner suggests that you go and take a walk, or you go to Sonic and get a Diet Dr. Pepper. That is what I do sometimes. But really providing that emotional support when you need it, rather than you being the person who has to push through no matter what all the time, right? Initiating repair. So this really going both ways, right? And shared ownership of daily life. This again is like, I'm like a really big fan of this home systems binder. And I got the idea off of Instagram, but here, I mean, you can literally put your own version of this together. And if one of the pain points for you is that you carry a lot of the home care load or whatever, however you want to phrase that, right? The chores, you can literally go in and say, okay, where are some areas that I can delegate out to my partner? And then you two can sit and think through it together, right? Repair is huge. We are not looking for the relationships that are perfect or that don't have arguments. Like, in fact, that is a cause for concern. We are looking at how well can you repair and come back to the table, grow yourself back up, move in a more functional way, and genuinely address the hurt rather than, well, I'm sorry if I made you feel that way, right? But truly holding a space and saying, it makes complete sense to me that my words had an impact on you. I am so sorry. What do you need from me moving forward? Okay. Accountability over your own behavior. So this goes both ways. In any dynamic, there's always a role that each of us are playing in it. And so being able to take accountability of, hey, you know what? It is really hard for me to follow through with what I say I'm going to do. Not only am I going to work on that behavior, I also want to take accountability that this is an issue that has stemmed from my childhood, and I need to go look at that. I'm not going to ask you to look at that for me. I'm actually going to go pursue support, therapy, whatever. Okay. And the last is initiative in terms of what we're looking for with healthy co-leading. So this is your partner understanding your love language, if you will, but what it is that you need and you enjoy, which typically is the result of your childhood, right? So the thing that you did not get in childhood is always the thing that you are looking for in your current marriage. It is the thing that's going to give most bang for your buck, right? But if you are someone who perhaps quality time is the thing that you really need, then initiative would look like planning the vacation, planning the staycation, planning a birthday celebration, right? Making a homemade card from the kids. I don't know, something like that, right? Initiative, them actually taking steps, moving forward and stepping up. So what gets in the way of this, because again, my clients are incredibly successful. They are smart. They are quick. I always tell them, I say this all the time on my discovery calls. My ladies know how to work a system. Like, you give them a system, you let them know what the deliverable needs to be, what the outcome can be in terms of what can be expected. They are going to work it. And so we capitalize on that in our work together, right? So then the question becomes, okay, well then why can't we get there if we know we want to be doing something different? So overfunctioning is actually a trauma response, which means that your nervous system, the thing you don't have a lot of cognitive control over, is what's making these decisions for you. Rather than in your brain saying, wow, I want to behave healthier in my marriage, and so now I'm going to go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, right? If your nervous system is the thing that actually bridges your thoughts and your behavior, that's what is driving the behavior. If we don't tend to this bridge, if we don't do the work there on regulating and being able to regulate whenever there is discomfort in the room, then you're never going to be able to actually get sustainable changed behavior. The other biggest thing that I see is a lack of language or modeling for what healthy partnership looks like. This is also a part of what I'm doing in my work with clients, right? Is coming online and saying, hey, first of all, there's no shame in this, because I hear that a ton. I hear, oh my gosh, I should know this. That was so easy, right? But I always say, do you know how to speak a language that you've never heard? Like, of course you don't. And would you shame yourself for that? Like, that's nonsense. I've maybe heard snippets of Japanese. I would never be able to say anything in Japanese unless I spent time and intention exposing myself to that, understanding the language, really listening to learn, right? If you've never seen a healthy partnership, which you haven't, if you're struggling in your marriage right now, then you did not grow up in a home with a healthy marriage. How on earth would you be able to then create something different, right? It's just not going to happen. So again, we run into this issue of you're trying to speak a language you've never heard. Okay. So 2 more things I want to leave you with before we end today. In terms of if you're okay, I'm going to start doing all of these things, where do I start? 2 biggest things that make the biggest difference when you are trying to change a dynamic rather than just a behavior is, first and foremost, I want you to track where you are holding too much. Because here's what doesn't work, guys, is you walk up to your partner and you say, okay, I heard this podcast and this is totally the issue. I'm functioning as your mom and you're behaving like a child and I'm carrying too much work. So I want to fix this. I want to work on it right now, right? Your partner's gonna be like, cool, what do I do with that? We want to get very granular, very specific. And the first thing that we need to do with that is to figure out, okay, where exactly am I holding too much? And if the answer is everything, we're going to choose one. Okay. So common categories I want you to think about are with the kids, housework, the mental load that comes with housework, the emotional health of a relationship, and then maybe quality time. Okay. Think about these categories or a different one that might resonate with you and say, I want to work on this. Second part, and what I want you to do that can really either set you up for success or you can shoot yourself in the foot, is I want you to use I language. Okay. Initiate a different kind of conversation that is rooted in invitation rather than accusation. No one responds well to criticism. You're not doing X, Y, and Z. You don't show up for me. You put lots of pressure on me. It's not what we're looking for. We are looking for, hey, I heard this podcast. It really made me think about ways that I want to grow in our relationship. I would really like some more support whenever it comes to the house. Here's an idea I have. What do you think about that? Right? It's an invitation. It's bringing them in. You always want to be standing next to your partner facing the issue rather than you and your partner facing each other becoming the issue. Okay. So again, I just want to leave you with this idea that you can be a leader. You can be a boss, babe, whatever at work, CEO, sitting in senior leadership, whatever it is. You can absolutely do that. And you can also have a healthy relationship that is built on mutuality. Ooh, that was a harder word than I thought. and not overfunctioning, not management. You get to ask for all of those things to be true because ideally you're not functioning as CEO at home. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.